It was December 24th. The world outside Veronica Whitford's hospital window was painted in soft shades of winter gray, with faint flakes of snow drifting lazily past the glass. The air inside smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sweet from the nurse's station down the hall. A small happy birthday card from Nurse Abby sat on the bedside table, next to the glass of water she hadn't touched. Veronica shifted slightly against the pillows, wincing at the dull ache in her hip. 2 days ago, she had slipped on a patch of ice in her driveway, and the fall had left her with a fractured hip and bruises along her arm. Her recovery was going well, but the doctor had insisted she stay for observation over the weekend. Normally, she would have been irritated at being stuck in a hospital bed on her birthday. But this year, she thought, it might not be so bad, because her son Nate had promised he'd come. She looked at the clock on the wall. 10:15 a.m. Still plenty of time. Nate always liked to sleep in, and Sarah, his wife, was never one to rush mornings. Veronica smiled faintly to herself. They'd probably stop by a bakery, bring her something sweet, maybe even bring flowers. The thought warmed her chest. She reached for her phone on the tray table and opened their last text conversation. "Sorry about your fall, Mom. We'll see you on your birthday, promise." She had read that line so many times, she could hear his voice saying it. Veronica had raised Nate on her own since he was 8 years old. She'd worked long days as a school principal, saved carefully, and done her best to give him a comfortable life without spoiling him too much. And for the most part, he'd turned out well: successful career, charming personality, a wife he clearly adored. But in recent years, something had shifted. Maybe it was Sarah's influence. Maybe it was the taste of luxury trips and fine dining Nate had gotten used to. Whatever it was, Veronica sometimes caught hints of entitlement in his tone, like he assumed she would always be there to fill in the gaps, financially and emotionally. Still, she loved him. Enough to overlook those things. Enough to hope this birthday visit would be warm and sincere. A nurse came in to check her vitals. "Your son coming soon?" Abby asked with a friendly smile. "Yes," Veronica said, glancing at the clock again. "Any time now." By noon, that answer didn't feel so certain. She texted him once. "Veronica, are you still coming?" No reply. She tried to distract herself with the TV, flipping through channels, but nothing held her attention. The laughter and chatter of families visiting other patients drifted in from the hall. Every time she heard the elevator doors open, she looked toward her door, half expecting Nate's tall frame to appear. At 2:17 p.m., her phone buzzed. Her heart lifted until she saw the message. "Hey Mom, I don't think we can make it today. Things are crazy. Money's tight, and honestly, I'm too stressed to travel. I'm so sorry. I promise we'll celebrate soon." Veronica stared at the words. A lump formed in her throat. She set the phone down slowly, trying not to let the sting show on her face when Nurse Abby walked in with lunch. "You all right?" Abby asked gently. "Yes," Veronica said. But she wasn't. It wasn't the first time Nate had canceled something important. But on her birthday? While she was in the hospital. She took a deep breath, telling herself there had to be a good reason. Money trouble, maybe. Unexpected bills. He'd always been bad at budgeting. She was still turning it over in her mind when her phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't a message from Nate. It was a notification from her friend, Martha, on social media. "Martha tagged you in a post." Veronica tapped it absent-mindedly. The photo loaded slowly on the hospital's Wi-Fi, but when it appeared, the breath caught in her throat. It was Nate and Sarah, standing under the Eiffel Tower, champagne glasses clinking in their hands. The caption read, "Celebrating the holidays in Paris with my favorite people. Hashtag living the best life, hashtag Paris 2023 inch." For a moment, Veronica thought there must be some mistake. Maybe it was an old photo? But the timestamp showed it had been posted just 20 minutes ago. She scrolled through Martha's post. There were more photos. Nate and Sarah at a luxury hotel suite with a panoramic view of the city. Dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Shopping bags from designer stores. Her pulse quickened. The hurt she'd felt earlier started to shift into something sharper, colder. She opened her banking app. The first-class flights. The hotel. The meals. The shopping. All charged to her credit card. The same card she had given Nate, just for emergencies. Veronica's hand tightened around the phone. An emergency, apparently, meant sipping champagne in Paris while your mother spent her birthday alone in a hospital bed. She sat back against the pillows, feeling the weight of the betrayal sink in. The hurt was still there, but beneath it, Something else was forming, a quiet, deliberate resolve. She didn't shout. She didn't call him to demand answers. That would be too easy for him. No, she thought, staring at the Eiffel Tower photo one last time. This called for something different. Something he wouldn't see coming. And in that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the faint beeping of monitors, Veronica began to plan. The hospital room was quiet except for the low hum of the heating vent and the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway. Veronica sat with her phone still in her hand, the Eiffel Tower photo glowing on the screen. She looked at Nate's wide smile, at Sarah's perfectly styled hair, at the champagne bottle on the table between them. A part of her wanted to cry. Another part wanted to call him right now and demand an explanation. But then she thought about the last few years, the borrowed money that never got paid back, the forgotten anniversaries, the missed family dinners because work was too busy when it clearly wasn't. If she called, he'd give her a story. If she shouted, he'd get defensive. And if she forgave him right away, he'd learn nothing. No, he needed to understand what it felt like to have the rug pulled from under him, to be left stranded. She placed the phone down, adjusted her pillows, and reached for her laptop in the drawer beside her bed. It was a little awkward with the 4 tubes still taped to her arm, but her hands were steady. Nurse Abby popped her head in. "Want me to turn on the TV for you?" Veronica shook her head. "No, thank you. I've got something to do." When Abby left, Veronica logged into her online banking account. She had given Nate access to one of her credit cards for emergencies only. The same card he'd just used to pay for a week in Paris. With a few clicks, she froze the card. Status: inactive. Her finger hovered over the next account. Nate had a joint account with her, one she used occasionally to send him money for household repairs or big expenses. She knew he used it often for everyday purchases too. She froze that one as well. Status: inactive. Her breathing slowed. She moved on to the savings account she'd been transferring money into for Nate's future. Not only did she freeze it, she transferred every last cent back into her own personal account. The hospital bed felt warmer now, as if the weight pressing on her chest had started to lift. But she wasn't done. She opened the airline's website and pulled up the reservation number from the credit card statement. It didn't take long to find the booking. 2 first-class tickets, Paris to New York, departure in 3 days. Paid entirely on her card. She called the airline. "Yes, I'd like to cancel a booking," she said politely when the agent picked up. "The card used was mine, and I'm reporting it as unauthorized." It took 20 minutes of verification questions, but when she ended the call, those tickets were gone. Nate and Sarah now had no flight home. She sat back, exhaling slowly. For the first time since she saw the photos, she felt in control. Across the Atlantic, in a luxury Paris hotel suite, Nate and Sarah were starting their morning. Sarah was in the bathroom curling her hair, humming to herself. Nate was sitting at the small desk, scrolling through his phone. "Hey," Sarah called. "Should we go shopping before lunch? I saw this boutique." "Hold on," Nate said. He was frowning at the screen. "My card just got declined for the room service bill." "What?" Sarah stepped out, a strand of hair wrapped around the curling iron. "That's impossible. Try another card." Nate tried his debit card. Declined. He tried the joint account card. Declined. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Call the bank. Maybe they think it's fraud." Back in the hospital, Veronica's phone lit up with Nate's name. She let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. She didn't pick up. By the time Nurse Abby came in with dinner, the phone had buzzed over a dozen times. "Someone's popular," Abby said with a small smile. Veronica smiled faintly. Something like that. She wasn't ignoring him just to be cruel. She was letting the panic sink in. Letting him feel that uneasy knot in the stomach when you realize you're not in control anymore. That night, as snow dusted the city outside, Veronica's phone recorded 14 missed calls and 7 voicemails from Nate. She didn't listen to them. Not yet. The next morning, Paris time, Nate tried again. This time his voice cracked in the voicemail. "Mom, please call me. Something's wrong with the accounts. We can't pay for the hotel, and they won't let us leave without settling the bill. The return tickets aren't showing up on the airline site. What's going on? Please just call me back." Veronica listened to that one. And then she played it again. There was no apology. No admission of what he'd done. Just panic for himself. She put the phone down, a calm, almost eerie sense of satisfaction settling over her. By evening, the calls had doubled. Some from Sarah, some from Nate. The tone was changing, less demanding, more desperate. She could almost picture them pacing in that fancy hotel room, realizing the reality. No money, no return ticket, no friendly mom to bail them out. Veronica closed her laptop, turned off the bedside lamp, and lay back. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow I'll pick up. Not tonight. She wanted the call to come at just the right moment, when the weight of their decisions had really set in, when they were no longer seeing Paris through champagne glasses, but through the lens of someone who'd run out of safety nets. And as she drifted to sleep, a small smile tugged at her lips. This wasn't about revenge. It was about teaching her son that trust, once broken, isn't something you just smooth over with a pretty story. By morning, she was ready for whatever came next. Morning light spilled across the hospital room in soft golden streaks, catching the steam from a fresh cup of coffee Nurse Abby had brought in. Veronica sat up slowly, her hips still sore but her mind sharper than it had been in days. She didn't even reach for the remote or the newspaper. Her phone was on the bedside table, screen dark, silent for now. She knew it wouldn't stay that way. It had been almost 36 hours since she'd frozen Nate's accounts and canceled the return tickets. The first day, his calls had been frantic and frequent. The second, they'd grown almost pleading. And by now, she knew the shift would happen. The moment when desperation cracked through the last layer of pride. She sipped her coffee, her eyes on the window, and waited. At 7:12 a.m., the phone lit up, Nate Whitford. For a moment, she let it ring. Not to be cruel, but to remind herself, this was her choice, her timing. Then, as the ringing was about to stop, she picked up. Mom. Oh, thank God you answered. Nate's voice was tight, rushed, like someone who'd been holding his breath for hours. We've been stuck here for 2 days. The hotel locked our room account. We can't even order food, and the airline says our tickets were canceled. What's going on? Did something happen with the bank? Veronica didn't respond right away. She let the silence stretch just long enough for him to notice. Something did happen, Nate, she said finally, her voice calm but heavy. Well, can you fix it? He asked quickly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Just call the bank or whatever. We can't. She cut him off. Nate, where are you right now? He hesitated. The hotel lobby. Which hotel? Another pause. Le Grand Hotel Paris. I see. She set her coffee cup down gently. Interesting choice for someone who told me he couldn't afford Christmas gifts this year, or even to visit me in the hospital on my birthday. There was a sharp inhale on the other end. Mom, it's not like that. It's exactly like that, she said, her tone still even but colder now. 2 days ago, you told me you were too stressed and too broke to visit. Hours later, I saw photos of you and Sarah under the Eiffel Tower, drinking champagne, staying in a luxury hotel, using my credit card. Nate's words tumbled over each other. It was supposed to be a surprise. We were going to tell you when we got back, and... Surprise! Veronica's voice sharpened. Do you know what my surprise was, Nate? Spending my birthday alone in a hospital bed while my only son was halfway across the world, lying to me. That's a surprise. On the other end, Nate went quiet. She could hear muffled voices, probably Sarah in the background, but he didn't put her on speaker. Mom, please, we don't have money for a flight. We can't even pay the hotel bill. I'm begging you. Just help us this one time. Veronica almost laughed, but it wasn't amusement, it was disbelief. One time. Nate, how many one times have there been? How many times have I given you money for emergencies that turned out to be vacations, gadgets, parties? How many times have you decided my savings were yours to dip into without asking? I said I'm sorry, he muttered. No, she said sharply, you haven't. You've just said you're in trouble. There was another pause, heavier this time. So, you're not going to help us? She leaned back against her pillows, letting her voice soften just a fraction. You left me when I needed you most, Nate. Now you can figure out how to get home without me. Consider it a lesson in responsibility. Before he could respond, she ended the call. Back in Paris, Nate stared at his phone, jaw clenched. Sarah was pacing near the hotel entrance, her designer coat wrapped tight against the winter air. Well, she demanded. She's not helping, he admitted. Not helping. Sarah's voice rose. She froze the cards, Nate. She canceled the flights. We're stuck here. Do you even know how humiliating it is to have the concierge look at you like you're some scammer? Nate rubbed his forehead. I'll figure something out. But the words felt empty. They could call friends, maybe. But who would front the money for last-minute flights from Paris to New York right after Christmas? Every option was either impossible or came with strings attached. Back in the hospital, Veronica set her phone down and reached for the small notebook she kept in the bedside drawer. She made a list, 3 items. Call lawyer. Check apartment lease agreement. Confirm security code change. Because while stranding them in Paris was satisfying, she knew the real lesson wouldn't come until they got home. Nurse Abby came in to check her blood pressure. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. Veronica smiled faintly. "Better than okay." That night, as she watched the snow drift past the hospital window, she knew the moment they landed back in New York, the second part of her plan would be waiting. And this time, it wouldn't just hit their wallets. It would hit the life they'd built on her generosity. She didn't hate her son. She didn't even truly want to hurt him. But she did want him to understand that trust was a currency too, and he'd spent every last bit of it. And by the time she was finished, he'd know what it felt like to be cut off completely. 3 days later, a bitter wind swept through JFK Airport as passengers shuffled through customs. Veronica sat in her living room, her hip carefully propped on a cushion, a mug of tea in her hands. She wasn't in the hospital anymore. She'd been discharged the day before, and the warmth of home wrapped around her like a shield. The phone had been quieter since that last call. Nate had sent a few short messages, nothing apologetic, just logistical. "Nate, we found flights." "Nate, coming back Friday." She hadn't replied. She knew what was coming, and she wanted him to walk into it unprepared. At the airport, Nate and Sarah trudged toward the arrival's exit. They weren't speaking much. The dream vacation had ended with 3 sleepless nights, living off vending machine snacks, and an overpriced, last-minute economy flight paid for with borrowed money from one of Nate's old college friends. Sarah's hair was flat from travel, her coat rumpled. Nate's eyes had dark circles. Neither of them looked like the glamorous couple in the Eiffel Tower photos anymore. The drive back to their apartment was silent, the hum of the cab engine filling the space where their chatter used to be. When they finally reached their building, Nate pulled out his keys. But as he pushed the brass key into the lock, something was wrong. It didn't turn. He tried again. Same result. Sarah frowned. "Did you grab the wrong key?" "No," Nate said, confused. He tried his other keys, the spare. None worked. Then he noticed the paper taped to the door. The words were bold and official. Notice of termination of tenancy. His name was right there. So was Sarah's. The letterhead belonged to Veronica's lawyer. Sarah snatched the paper and read aloud. "You are hereby notified that your month-to-month occupancy of the premises is terminated effective 30 days from the date of this notice. The property owner requires you to vacate." Her voice faltered. "She's kicking us out?" Nate's pulse spiked. He scanned the letter again, as if he'd misread it. But no, the signature at the bottom was clear. Eleanor M. Hensley, attorney for Veronica Whitford. Inside her living room, Veronica's phone buzzed. She picked it up, already knowing who it was. "Mom, what is this?" Nate's voice was sharp now, the panic thinly masked with anger. "It's exactly what it says," Veronica replied, her tone steady. "The apartment belongs to me, Nate. I let you live there rent-free for years. That arrangement ends now. You can't just—" "I can," she cut in. "And I have." Sarah's voice rose faintly in the background. "Is this because of the trip? We already said we were sorry." "No," Veronica said firmly. "You haven't said you're sorry. You've said you're inconvenienced. Those aren't the same thing. This isn't punishment, it's reality. You've been living like my money is your safety net. I'm cutting the net." There was a beat of silence on the line. Then Nate's voice dropped. "So you're really just throwing your own son out on the street?" Veronica sighed. "No. I'm giving you 30 days to find a place you can afford. And maybe while you're looking, you'll think about the choices that got you here." Outside the locked apartment, Sarah was pacing now, phone in hand. "We can't move in 30 days. This is insane." Nate lowered his voice. "We'll figure it out." But the words felt weaker than they ever had. They both knew the truth. They had been living beyond their means for a long time, and now the safety blanket was gone. For the next week, Veronica heard nothing from them. She imagined them sorting through their expensive clothes, trying to sell off handbags and watches to cover deposits and moving costs. She pictured the way Paris must have felt now, less like a happy memory, more like the moment everything started to unravel. One afternoon, there was a knock at her door. When she opened it, Nate stood there alone. He looked smaller somehow. The tailored coats and shiny shoes were gone. He wore a plain sweatshirt and sneakers. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. She stepped aside. They sat at the kitchen table. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Nate took a breath. "I'm sorry, Mom. Not just for Paris. For all of it. I got comfortable. I took advantage of you. I thought you'd always just help, no matter what." Veronica listened, her expression unreadable. "I don't want your money anymore," he said. "I just want to fix things." Something in his voice, earnest, stripped of excuses, softened her. "Fixing things," she said slowly, "starts with living within your means. And respecting the people who care about you enough to tell you when you're wrong." He nodded. "I know." By the time he left, nothing was magically resolved. He still had to move. He still had to face the financial mess he'd made. But for the first time in years, Veronica believed he might actually learn from it. That night, she sat by the window with her tea, watching snow fall on the quiet street. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was waiting for the next disappointment. Paris had been his dream trip. This was her reality check for him. And in the end, it wasn't about cutting him off. It was about giving him the one thing he'd been missing all along. A reason to grow up.